There's a very interesting shaila question of what is so meyuchad, what is so special about these parshas Shovavim that we make a special 6 weeks of getting ourselves, going through the process of tshuva, going through the process of understanding ourselves better, as Rabbi Majeski said, strengthening our shalom bayis, our marital harmony. What's so special about these parshas that we can't do it the rest of the year? And the Netziv writes in the beginning of Parsha Shmos, very famous words. And he's dealing with over there, what is the reason that Klal Yisrael was brought down to Mitzrayim? And why is it that we had to go into such a very deep and serious gullus exile that we went into? And the Netziv writes very simply. He says that Klal Yisrael came to Mitzrayim. They were the children of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Yosef HaTzadik was still alive when they got there. And they were supposed to live a certain life. A life of Klal Yisrael. A life of Kedusha, a life of Ribono Shel Olam, a life of mitzvahs, a life of tikkun, of working on themselves. And the Jewish people, as Yaakov Avinu set out for us, understand that the only way that we will succeed is if we keep in our minds constantly how beautiful and how glorious it is to be a Jew. But Chazal tell us, as the Netziv writes, and the Rambam says it also, that from the time that Yosef HaTzadik died in Mitzrayim, the Jewish people went all downhill. Assimilation, they went back to Avodah Zarah, idol worship. They began forgetting who they were. They stopped the mitzvah even of Bris Milah. Nothing at all to do with the glory of Klal Yisrael anymore. Says in Netziv, once that they began to immerse themselves in that environment, once they gave themselves so much over to the lifestyle of the Egyptians, they lost the definition and the beauty of what it means to be a Jew. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought the Golus, he brought the exile, the harsh exile on Klal Yisrael in relation to the assimilation and the leaving of the Derech HaEmes, the path of truth that they were supposed to be on. Comes along the Ribono Shel Olam and he gives us Shovavim. And Shovavim is the parshas in the Torah, starting with Shmos, really as the Ramban writes in the Chumash, that are all here to remind us of what it means to be a Jew, what it means to be a Maimin, to believe in Hashem, what it means to see Hashgacha Pratis, divine intervention in your life, what it means to aspire to a life of holiness, of Kedusha, what it means to appreciate and value the Torah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us by Har Sinai and translated into our lives. And all of the parshas Shovavim are here to instill that once again inside of our lives, to be misakin, to clean up the mistakes of Klal Yisrael from so many thousands of years ago, to examine ourselves as well and to remind ourselves of what exactly we are doing here in this world. And through each and every parsha that we go through, we are to be reminded again and again, week after week, that every single aspect of Yiddishkeit, of our Torah, every single detail in the mitzvahs, every single thing that we do to make ourselves into a better person, a better Jew, that itself really is the crowning glory of our nation. Not to forget that we are Klal Yisrael. Because the moment that we forget that we are Klal Yisrael and who we are and what it means to be so special as part of our nation, then that becomes the destruction personally, internally, in the family, in the community, and in our nation. There's a beautiful, beautiful Maisa story of a family in the times of the Holocaust as the war was getting underway. And the father was working very hard to procure passports and visas to escape from their small town and eventually be able to go and come to America or go to Eretz Yisrael and live a life of freedom. And he had some connections in the government, and he was working tirelessly to be able to secure passports for himself, his wife, and everyone in his family. Finally, the day comes, the letter comes in the mail from the government office, and the father excitedly removes it from the mailbox because here are the passports that they've been waiting for. And he opens up the envelope and he reaches his hand inside, and he sees that instead of 8 passports which they needed for the entire family to leave, there was only 1 passport that was there. And the father looks into the passport and he sees that this is the passport of a young boy in their family who is only 5 years old at the time. And the father is left asking, what am I going to do? There's 8 people, there's 1 passport, and the 1 passport belongs to this 1 little child over here. The father goes home and speaks to his wife. He explains to her everything, and they decide, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu decreed that there will be 1 passport for our family, and it is for this child, then this is the one that is going to go to freedom. What will happen to us, we have no idea. The father calls his son into the room, and he says, Yankel, you know that I've been working to procure passports for our family. The letter came today from the post office. The son gets so excited, yes. And there was only 1 passport inside of that envelope, and it belongs to you. Tomorrow morning, early in the morning, I'm going to wake you. I'm going to walk you down to the train station, and I'm going to put you on a train where you will go to freedom, and we don't know what's going to happen to the rest of our family. And the boy begins crying, and he says, Yankele, don't cry. This is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. You are to go free. What will be with us, we don't know. And sure enough, the next morning, early in the morning, the father leans down and he says, Yankel, it's time to wake up. And he jumps out of his bed. And he washes negovasa, he washes his hands. He says, Moida Ani in his house for the last time ever. And he puts on his clothes and they begin walking through the quiet streets in this small little town. And as they're walking down the street, the father is holding his son's hand, but he's not saying a word. And every so often he squeezes his son's hand just that he should know that he's there. They get to the train station and they're sitting on the bench waiting for the train to come, not a single word. And they're waiting, and suddenly they hear the roar of the train coming. The station begins shaking, and at this point the father gets up and he takes his son by the hand, and he doesn't say a word the entire time. They get over to the train as it pulls up, and he picks up the suitcase and he puts it in his son's hand. And he walks him up to the steps that are going up to the train. And right before his son is about to leave, he turns him around. And he looks at him and he says, Yankel, never forget, you are a Yid, you are a Jew. Never forget. And he sends his son up the stairs. And the son gets on the train and he's sitting by the window. And his father is standing and he's waving his finger, Yankele, never forget, you are a Yid, you are a Jew. And the train starts moving and moving, and the father's walking along with the train and he keeps saying, never forget. And as the train starts going faster and faster, the father's running, and the last words the young boy hears is, never forget, you are a Jew. This boy went on to survive. He went to Eretz Yisrael, to the land of Israel. He ended up raising a family filled filled with Yirei Shemayim, people of Yiras Hashem, who feared Hashem's word, Talmidei Chachamim, scholars and the like. And when this man passed away and the Rosh Hashiva of one of these boys, of his children, came to pay a Shiva call, he said, what was the secret? How did your father have such children? How did he have such a house like this? And the children said, because all of his life he never forgot what it meant to be a Jew. And that's Shovavim. Shovavim is the time of the year for each and every one of us. We never want to forget what it means in our heart, in our neshamas, in our souls, what it means to be part of Am Yisrael. Now, normally in a regular year, Shovavim ends with Parshas Mishpatim. We go through Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Exodus. We're freed. We leave all of our enemies behind. They drown in the sea. And then we have Parshas Yisro. Hashem gives us the Torah. And then there's Mishpatim. We get all of those laws. Yud Mem, the Yam Shel Torah. We end it all off with. But on a year like this, a Shana Me'uberes, where we have an extra month of Adar, so we have what's called Shovavim Tat, which means Truma and Tetzava also become part of it. And Truma and Tetzava is really nailing home, driving home. What is the tachlis? What is the purpose of all of the Torah that we gain while we're standing there by our Sinai? As the pasuk says in Vayeschanan, when the Torah repeats the Yiseres Hadibros, the 10 Commandments, it tells us that Moshe Rabbeinu says over to Klal Yisrael, Leich, or Hashem says, Leich emor lehem. Go and tell over to the Jewish people, Shuvu lechem lahalechem. Return to your tents. Return to your homes. Torah was not meant to stay on Har Sinai. Torah was not only meant to be learned inside the Beis HaMidrash. Torah was not only when you're davening and you have your tefillin and you have your talis over your head, or you're involved in doing chasadim for other people. Leich shuvu lachem lalaheichem. Go back to your tents. Bring the Torah over there. Because the Torah belongs in our homes. It's how we treat our spouses. It's how we raise our children. It's how we open our homes to orchim, to guests. It's how we refine our midos, our character. The Torah is the secret to life. And it's the secret to a Jewish house. And if a person brings it home during these last 2 weeks of Shovavim, Truma, the building of the Mishkan, as we'll see tonight, Bez Hashem, our homes are supposed to be the Mishkan. Then all of the Torah that we learned by Har Sinai, all of the great messages of Kedusha that we took with us, all of the insights into the godless, the greatness of our neshama, if it exists inside the home, then it could exist in no better place at all. My Rosh Kala once said that if you look at all of the names, that Klal Yisrael is referred to in the Chumash, we're called Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel. Am Yisrael, the nation of Israel. Am HaSegula, we're the treasured nation. The Am HaNivcha, the chosen nation. But there's one name that we are given that appears more than any other name that HaKadosh Baruch Hu calls us in His Torah. And it's probably not what you would expect it to be. The most common name that we are referred to as a nation in the Torah is Beis Yisrael, the house of Israel, which means the essence of Klal Yisrael, who we are as a nation. It starts in the bayis, it starts in our house. But our house starts even before that. Our house is going to start with us. And that's what we have in this week's Parsha, Parshas Truma, the very famous words that we know, as it says in the pasuk, V'asu li migdash, make for me a migdash, a sanctuary. V'shachanti b'seicham, and I will dwell b'seicham, I will dwell amongst you. Says Rashi over here, what does it mean? Make for me a migdash and I will dwell amongst you. V'asu lishmi, make that migdash, make that dwelling place for me. Beis kedusha, a house of kedusha, of holiness. And this is really, as the Mefarshim, the Sforno and others ask, it says in the pasuk over here, make for me a migdash, a sanctuary. But we're talking about the Mishkan. We're not talking about the Migdash. Is the Beis HaMikdash later on in Yerushalayim when we settle the land. And the next pasuk itself refers to this not as the Migdash, but as the Mishkan. So what is it? Is the Migdash, the sanctuary, is the place of Kedusha that will be the permanent edifice in the land of Israel? Or is it the Mishkan, is it the tabernacle that was dwelling in the wilderness? And the Sforno and others write that the understanding over here in this pasuk is that of course we're referring to the Mishkan, but the Mishkan is the place of the Hashras HaShechina. Mishkan is the Lashon of Shechina. The Mishkan is the place where the Shechina dwelled amongst Klal Yisrael. But the only way in which the Shechina is going to dwell amongst the Jewish people is if we are Mekadesh, if we are making that bias, making that place holy. The Shechina doesn't come for free. The Shechina doesn't go into any house. The Shechina is only going to go into a house where it senses, where it can smell that there is Kedusha that is there in those walls. Then the Shechina says, that's the Makom, that's the place that I want to dwell. You're building the Mishkan, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Make it lishmi, make it for me, says Hashem. Beis Kadosh, a house of Kedusha that I myself am going to be comfortable dwelling in. So I assume that all of us want in our homes that the Shechina should come and dwell there. When I was just newly married, I had the schus to meet a man, a Rabbi Vitzik in Baltimore, who was a Talmid of the Chavetz Chaim. You know what this means? The man learned by the Chavetz Chaim. And someone took me over. I davened in a shul sometimes in the morning, and a friend of mine brought me over there. I was newly married, maybe a few weeks. And he said, Rabbi Vitzik, give my friend a bracha. He's a chassid, he just got married, give him a bracha. He gave me the best bracha that a person could ask for. And the bracha was the following: may the Shechina always be comfortable in your home. Who doesn't want to know that they have a house where the Shechina feels comfortable? Some people come to our homes, they feel comfortable opening up the fridge, taking whatever they want to eat. That's one level. Some people feel comfortable, they walk into your house, they start looking through your papers that are on your desk. Okay, it's another level of comfortability. Some people walk in, they kick off their shoes, take off their coat, throw it on the couch, make themselves at home. That's also comfortable. But wouldn't you love to know that when the Shechina is looking for a place just to go and relax and dwell in this world, he says, you know what? In that home over there, that's where I feel comfortable. Because that's a place that was Mekadesh itself, sanctified itself, lifted itself up in this world, and that's where I could find myself being. So there are two stages to speak about this evening that is going to allow us, Be'ez Hashem, to make our homes a place that is comfortable for the Shechina to be able to dwell and to visit and to come, so that when anybody walks into your house, they can say, The Shekhinah's here? How'd you get the Shekhinah in your house? Well, because that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. He said, take the Torah back to your house and build a Mishkan inside of your home. The Nefesh HaChaim, the Bali Musar, Bali Machshava, the Sifrei Chasidus, they all say on this pasuk over here, the grammar is incorrect. V'asali migdash, make for me a migdash, a sanctuary. V'shechanti b'seicham, and I will dwell inside of you. Everybody who knows Diktuk, who knows Hebrew grammar, knows it should be, make for me a migdash. V'shechanti b'seicha, and I'll dwell inside of it. What does it mean, b'seichem, that I'll dwell inside of you? And so they all say the same answer, all in different ways. And that is that each and every one of us, all of Klal Yisrael, we are what's called a Migdash Ma'at. We are a microcosm of the Mishkan, of the Beis HaMikdash, of the temple in Yerushalayim. And just as the Shekhinah dwelled inside of there, so we are supposed to make ourselves an edifice in this world where the Shekhinah is dwelling inside of us. Which means, based on our logic over here, if you want the Shekhinah to come inside of you, there's got to be Kedusha. There has to be holiness. What is Kedusha? What is holiness? Holiness is, holy is the overused word. In LA, I don't even know if that you're allowed to say that word anymore in Los Angeles. It's probably too politically incorrect to say such a word. Holy, same gender, holiness, whatever it might be. You can't even say it anymore. What does it mean, Kedusha? What does holiness mean? So we know in Parashas Kedoshim, which speaks about what it means, the mitzvah of Kedusha, to be a holy nation. The Sforno writes over here, Achar, Shehisha Shechinasa b'Yisrael. Once that Hashem has dwelled His Shekhinah amongst Klal Yisrael, He wants to keep it there. So how is the Shekhinah going to stay amongst the people? Yeah, it's like, does the Shekhinah stay in a shul? Go to a shul on Shabbos, and you see all the antics that are going on inside of a shul. You see, this guy is yelling at this one because he davens too loud. Meanwhile, while he's telling everyone the shush, he's bothering everybody else in the shul. This in the kitchen over there, they're making noise, splashing the plates and the bowls and everything like that. Nobody can concentrate. This guy's falling asleep during the rabbi's drasha. This one's making fun of the rabbi's drasha. This one is walking out of the rabbi's drasha. The shul is supposed to be the place of the Beis HaMikdash in this world, isn't it? Does the Shekhinah stay in our shuls? The Shekhinah feels comfortable amongst us. As it sees, cholent they like. A good l'chaim they like. A little extra cake, that they like. The drasha, where'd they go during the drasha? Where are they for the learning? Where are they working on their midos in the shul? You know how much fighting takes place inside of shuls? You can't even fight like that on the streets of Los Angeles, but in a shul, no problem. Sky's the limit. Do whatever you like. So how could the Shekhinah dwell and be comfortable inside of our shuls? Says the Sforno, if you want the Shekhinah to stick around, there's one thing you have to do. Kedusha means to separate. What do you have to separate yourself from? Separate yourself from those things that are tameim, that are impurities in the nation of Klal Yisrael. Remove yourself from those situations, from those events, from those actions that you do which bring about impurity. And if you keep yourself away from there, then you'll be zeicha, then you will merit that the Shekhinah is going to remain intact and together with you in your life. And I was thinking, perhaps since that this is a shiur for men and for women, so I can't lace into the men because I don't want to embarrass them in front of their wives. I can't lace into the women because they'll cry and then I'll never be able to speak in North Hollywood again. So we have to speak about something that is called Shavah L'Kol Nefesh, that is equally important to each and to every one of us, that we're all struggling with and we all have to work on, where we have to separate ourselves. The Vilna Gaon writes in his Sefer Even Shleima, it's not really his Sefer, it's put together by his Talmidim, it's based on a pasuk in Mishlei, Iker Chayus HaAdam, the Iker, the main life of a person, is to lischazek tamid b'shviras hamidos, is to strengthen himself constantly in the act of breaking their negative character traits. V'im lav, and if they don't do that, lama loy chayim, why are they alive? Says the Vilna Gaon. Now the Rav Shach says these words of the Vilna Gaon are what's called a pliya atzuma. They are a wonder of wonders. The Vilna Gaon, anyone that knows, he slept only 2 hours a day at 4 half-an-hour intervals. He was either busy learning or davening or doing mitzvahs for the other 22 hours of the day that he was awake. Malachim, angels, used to come down from heaven and they would say, "Oh Eliyahu, let's teach you the deepest secrets of the Torah." And he said, "Go away from me. The only Torah that I want to learn in my life is the Torah that I earn on my own. I don't want secrets from the heavens." So the Vilna Gaon, who learned 18, 19 hours a day, who lived a life that was completely separate from this world, if you would think to yourself, what would the Vilna Gaon say the purpose of life is? Learn Torah, of course. That's the greatest chiyus, the greatest life a person could have. But the Vilna Gaon says no. You know what the most important aspect of life is? Make sure that you are constantly working on one thing. Break your bad character traits. Because that's chiyus, that is life, that is the Shechina coming and dwelling together with you. V'im lav, and if you don't do that, so then what's the point of being alive? We're missing the entire boat of what it means to be a living, breathing, Jewish, spiritual person here in this world. And therefore, if we want to steer clear of the impurities of this world, if we want to rid ourselves of those things that are pushing the Shechina away, like the Gemara tells us, all of the midas, all the bad traits, gaiva, hardiness, atzlus, laziness, kas, anger, all of those terrible traits, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, to a person who's a Baal Gaiva, who's such a hardy, conceited individual, there's not enough room in this world for me and for you. You took it all up with your own hot air. So where am I going to come? How can I be comfortable inside of you? And therefore a person has to work and work and work and work constantly on making sure that their midas, their character traits, are refined. Now the beauty of marriage is that your spouse will be very happy to remind you how much you have to work on your character traits, and how much you're not working on your character traits. And I thought that after 25 years already you're going to stop with all of this nonsense, but I see you just keep getting worse and worse and worse. Of course, by the men, the minute that you try to tell your wife anything, that's it. You're sleeping on the couch that night, you're out the door. But women apparently have all the permission in the world to tell their husbands everything that is wrong with them, and we're never allowed to say a single word back. But it's not true. Both husband and wife are obligated to be working on their midas, on their character traits. My job is not to change my spouse, and my spouse's job is not to change me. Our job is to change ourselves as individuals and bring all of that kedusha, all of that beauty into the home. One of the great mechanchim, educators in the world today, is a man by the name of Rabbi Dovid Horowitz. And he sent over the following story. He had a friend, a good friend of his, whose wife, unfortunately, she went a little bit meshuggah, she went a little bit crazy. And she snapped a little bit, and part of her condition was that she would berate her husband whenever she was in the mood to berate him. Now, some of you might think that's normal, but this was not a very normal thing. She could do it in front of the children. She could do it by the Shabbos table when there were guests around. They could be by a chassan or by a wedding, and she would begin berating her husband and shaming him and embarrassing him in public. So this man came to his friend, Rabbi Brizak, and he said, Reb Dov, I don't know what to do. My wife, unfortunately, she snapped a little bit. It's very hard for all of us. But now she has this terrible habit. She berates me publicly. She embarrasses me. She shames me in front of other people. What am I supposed to do? So I want to tell her, stop. I want to stand up for myself when I get embarrassed. What am I supposed to do? So Rabbi Brizak thought to himself, and he said, listen, I can't tell you what to do because I'm not the one that's being embarrassed all the time. I'm not the one who feels the way that you feel. But I can tell you one thing. A person that overlooks the wrong that others do to them, they never lose out. And if you could work on yourself and not let it upset you, and you can overlook the way in which she's treating you, what can I tell you? I believe that you'll never lose out. He says, okay, you know what? I'll try it. It's going to be hard work because I'm already up to here. I'll try it. About 6 months later, this fellow comes back to Rabbi Brizak and he says, Reb Dov, I have to tell you an amazing thing. Remember our conversation? Yes. And you told me someone who overlooks the wrong that is done to him, someone that will work on themselves and not let it affect them, you never lose out? Yes. So I want you to know I've been working and working on myself, breaking my midas, breaking my character traits for the last 6 months. Last night, I overhear my children talking in the other room. And they asked the following question. Who do you want to be like when you grow up? So one of my sons said, when I grow up, I want to be like Abba. So the kid said, really, like Abba? Why do you want to be like Abba? And my son said, do you see the way that our mommy treats him? Do you see the way that she talks to him? The way that she embarrasses him all of the time? And do you see the way that Abba handles it? He doesn't say a word. When I grow up, I want to be like Abba. V'asuli migdash, make for yourself a migdash, make yourself into a place of kedusha. V'shachanti b'seicham, and I, the Shechina, I will be comfortable inside of you. I will dwell inside of you. Other people will see you and they will say, wow, look at this person with the kedusha that's in their lives, the way they treat other people. Look how he deals with his midos, with his wife, with his children. So much so your own children are going to be motivated to become more like you, a vessel that the Shechina is able to come and dwell in. And that itself is the foundation to making our homes into the Mishkan. If a husband and a wife are working on themselves constantly, as the Vilna Gaon says, that lischazek tamid, that a person is always working and working and working, and they are showing one another respect and love and care and concern, and they look at each other. I think that kedusha in our generation is if a person could put this down when they walk into the home and actually look at their spouse in the eyes for 5 minutes and say, how was your day, honey? How was it at work? How are the kids today? How did everything go? And she starts talking to you and your phone is ringing in your pocket. Don't pull out your phone and interrupt the moments of kedusha between you and your wife. If a father and a mother would actually put down their social media when their children are standing in front of them and look at them and talk to them and hug them and embrace them. This is the Kedusha, this is the holiness of our generation, of separating ourselves from those things that are bringing in the impurity. There was a Maisa story that was going around recently. I think everybody saw it on social media. That's the joke of the whole thing. There's a mother and a father sitting at a table, late at night, they're in the kitchen, and the wife is a teacher, she's busy grading tests, and the husband, of course, is on his phone, flipping around the world doing something. And his wife is grading the following papers. The question was, if you could be anything in the world, what would you like to be and why? So she had a class of young boys and she's reading the papers and she's chuckling. One of them wanted to be a car because he could drive fast. The other one a rocket, he can go to the moon. Another one chocolate because he would be so sweet. Whatever, all the different things. And suddenly, in the midst of grading these papers, she gets very serious look on her face. Ba'ashkacha, the husband, had looked up for that moment from his phone. And he sees his wife very serious and she has tears in her eyes. And he says, "Dear, what's the matter? You were laughing, why are you crying?" And she says, "Because of the answer on this paper over here." He says, "Well, what does it say?" She says, the boy writes that if he could be anything, he would like to be his father's iPhone. Why? Because then maybe my father would look at me and pay attention to me. So the father said to his wife, "Okay, it's pretty serious, but why are you crying?" She says, "Because our son is in my class, and this is our son's answer." A person who puts down the phone today, so that this is where we're holding in our generation, that is Kedusha. You take your wife out on a date. You know the funniest thing? You go to restaurants these days, husbands and wives, they got babysitters, they left the kids alone, they drove all the way from the valley to the city, it's a big schlep, they asked for the corner table in the candlelight dinner, she got all dressed up, he even put on perfume or cologne, whatever it is, he actually combed his hair for the first time since the chasana, and now they're sitting there in the restaurant, and what are they doing? Both of them on their phones, talking to each other. Because that's the only way that we know how to communicate these days. So if a person would put it down and leave it alone in those key moments when you walk in the house, when you see your wife, when you're with your children, all of that is v'asuli migdash, make yourself kadosh, make yourself holy. And then the Shekhinah is going to dwell not only inside of you, but it's going to dwell inside of your home, inside of your house as well. And this is the message of Shovavim Tat. The last 2 weeks of Shovavim, we have to take all of the Kedusha that we generate from learning about Yetzias Mitzrayim, our Amun in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, recognizing that He's the creator of the world and He's involved in our lives. Everything that He does is for the good and how much He loves Klal Yisrael. All of that is true. Come to Har Sinai, stand by the mountain, lift it to a level of Nevuah like Moshe Rabbeinu, receive the Torah, all the mitzvahs. But as the Pasuk says, don't stay on Har Sinai. Don't leave it on the mountain. You have to bring the Torah home to your house. And the only way you're going to do that is if you bring it home into your heart. And then you bring it into your house. And a husband and a wife together who are working on themselves, on their midos, on their mitzvahs, on the love of Hashem, then they are mekadesh themselves. And then the bias, like Rashi says, the house itself becomes a place of kedusha, of sanctity. And in that holy house that you will have, the Shekhinah is going to dwell. I just want to leave off with one of my all-time favorite maisim of Shalom Bayis, Could be that I even said it over here before, but it's worthwhile to repeat again. In the old city of Yerushalayim at the turn of the century, the late 1800s, early 1900s, when the Jewish people came to settle down in the old city, it wasn't like it is today. There was no holy bagel that you could go and get breakfast from. It didn't exist. The kaisel, to get to the kaisel Hamaravi was a difficult task to get there, just to touch the walls. There were no stores that you could go buy a soda in if you were hot. It was very, very difficult living conditions. No running water. Who knew where the plumbing was? Food was sparse. It was very difficult to live there. But when things are difficult, that creates the tzaddikim, that creates the righteous people that are going to live there. One of the hidden tzaddikim of the old city of Yerushalayim during that time was a man by the name of Rabbi Yaakov. And Rabbi Yaakov was known for his hidden acts of chesed, that he was a great scholar, although nobody ever knew the great levels of Kabbalah, of inner mystical wisdom that he knew. He kept it all concealed. But people knew this is a holy man. Shechina there is on his face, in his life. One day he gets a little bit sick, and he feels even more sick. And as the weeks go on, his strength is ebbing and ebbing away. And he calls his wife over to his bed one day, and he says, "My dear wife, I don't think that I'm going to be in this world much longer." He said, "But I have one last request of you." And she said, "Of course, my husband, whatever you want. It will be my greatest wish and desire to give you the last thing that you want. What could I give you?" He said, "You know that we haven't had a hot meal in this house in months already. I would like a bowl of porridge. A hot, steaming bowl of porridge." She said, "Whatever you want, I'll take care of it." She goes to her cupboards, bare. To the fridge they don't have, bare. She needs oatmeal, she needs some salt, she needs a little bit of sugar and some milk. She has nothing. She goes to one neighbor, she borrows some oats. To another one, she gets a little pinch of salt. This one gives her a teaspoon or a tablespoon of sugar, and another one gives her some milk. She comes like she has the greatest treasure in the world, carrying back all the ingredients to the house. She puts it in the pot onto the stove, and she begins mixing for the first time in months a hot pot of porridge. And the entire house is filling up with the aroma of this delicious meal. And finally, when it's ready, she pours it into a bowl. And she brings it in her hands to her husband as if she has the prized jewel in her hands. And she says, "My dear husband, here is the bowl of porridge that you asked for." And he looks at his wife and he says the following: "In a few hours, I am no longer going to be in this world. What good is the porridge going to do me? But my dear wife, when I leave this world, you have the children, you'll have to take care of the funeral arrangements, you'll have to figure out how you're going to take care of everything. You will need much more strength than I will. And therefore I want you to eat the bowl of porridge." "No," she says, "Please, you asked me what my last wish is. I asked you to make the porridge so that you would be the one to be able to eat it and have the strength to go on after I am not here." Said Rav Vitzik so many years ago, the greatest bracha that you can have in your life is that the Shechina should always be comfortable in your home. When he sees a house of Kedusha, when he sees a house of people that are working on themselves and working together, when he sees a house that knows that, yes, as Magnificent as the world of technology is, it cannot control us, because if it does, we'll lose our marriages, we'll lose our children, and we'll lose everything else that goes along with it. When a person lives their life like that, then you have the greatest bracha of all. You make yourselves into a migdash. You make your bias, your house, into a migdash. And then the Shekhinah will always be comfortable in your homes.
Thank you, Rabbi Horowitz. Not saying anyone should ever leave North Hollywood.